I would like to welcome you to our seminar on stewardship of money. And as we heard from the prayer, it's quite a sensitive issue. It doesn't matter in what context you are in. It's normally can result in some tension. It might be in a home when you begin to question your wife or your husband. Okay. Okay. So you might want to get more detail maybe from your wife on how they use the money. That will be a source of tension immediately. It might be in a church situation. I've been a church treasurer for many years, and I know that a lot of church members become alive when it comes to finances. That's when they begin to ask all sorts of questions and so on and so forth. And I know of churches where it has resulted in disunity within the church because of the whole issue of stewardship of money. And it's also something that we do not discuss as friends. It's not something that you'd ask, for example, ask your friend, how much do you get as a salary? Unless you want to lose that friendship. So it's a guarded subject for many people. It's not something that is easily discussed. Even amongst the pastors, it's not something that they preach about because the suspicion might be that maybe he wants a salary, like Pastor Mbe was saying, he wants a salary increase. That's why he's talking about money. You know, these days, pastor is just talking about money, money. And maybe that's why they asked me to talk about it, because I'm not a pastor. But I think it's a very important issue. It's something that we need to talk about. It's something that affects the life of the church. I know that also the ministries of the church. I sit on the ACU board. One of the challenges that we have is on money. And I think that it is because we do not have this biblical understanding of the stewardship of money. And that's what I'm hoping, that at the end of this seminar, we'll be able to have this biblical understanding of the stewardship of money. Now let's begin with the fact that everything that is here on earth belongs to God. That's what we see in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 26. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 26, the Bible says, "For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof." Everything that we see around us, everything that we have belongs to God. And that includes the wealth that we have as individuals. Psalm 24 verse 1 to 2 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, and the world and all who live in it. For he founded it upon the seas and established it upon the water." So I think it's very clear that everything belongs to God. There's nothing that we have that we can call our own. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 7 says, "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out." Nothing can be more clearer than that. We brought nothing in this world. And if you are doubtful, you can visit two places: the maternity ward and the mortuary. Two places. You can see the babies that they have not come with anything. And those that are living this world are living with nothing. So we need to have this understanding of the fact that it is God. Everything that we have, everything that we ever have, belongs to God. It has been given to us by God. Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 18 says, "It is God who gives us the power and the ability to create wealth." So no one can boast. It is all of God. And I think that it is important that we lay that as a foundation. It is God who promotes. It is God who prospers. But why has God given us this mandate? And that is something that we see even from the beginning in the book of Genesis. And it is to the end that we use this wealth for the glory of God. It is not for our own. Uh, it was not for our own glory or for our own enjoyment per se, but it is to be used to the glory of God. It is also to be used for the extension of His kingdom here on earth. I think that's our calling as Christians, the extension of God's kingdom. And obviously, for you to do that, you need the resources, isn't it? Resources are required, and that's why He gives us money or wealth or whatever term you might refer to. It is to be used for that purpose. It is to be used for the spread of the gospel. That is what God requires of us. And we should also use it as a reflection of our love for God. It's our expression of gratitude. I think the Bible talks many places about the need for us to be grateful. And one of the ways that we can express our love for God and our gratitude to God is by being good stewards of the wealth that God has given us. But it is also to be used as a channel of blessing to others. When I was looking at the scriptures, I found that there are many, particularly in the Old Testament, the Lord talks about looking out for the poor. Many, many places. Help the needy among you. And that shows you something of the heart of God. And therefore, when you have that wealth, it's not for you to keep. It is for you to use it as a channel of blessing to others. I've seen that the Muslims have taken it a bit further. I think they have institutionalized it in the fact that they give alms. I think it's not a bad thing, but I think it's something that we need to see more among God's people. We should not have, I remember Peter Masters, when he came in 1993 for the conference, he said that rich Christians should not live as rich Christians. The problem is that we have rich Christians who live as rich Christians. They forget the fact that they are to be channels of blessing to others. There's the issue of sharing. There's the issue of giving to the poor. But the Lord also expects us to multiply. I remember the parable of the talents. What was expected of those people that were given talents? If you're given 5, it was expected to make 5. If it is 10, then you make 10. And that's what is required of us, even with regard to money. You need to find ways in which you can multiply the monies that you have. And we'll be able to look at that a bit later. And therefore, all financial decisions must be made in the light of what God requires of us. All financial decisions must be made in the light of what God requires of us. Many times we separate money. I heard people, when we're talking about the seminar, people say, this side we're talking about money. As if it's not, it's worldly in a sense. So there's that separation. People, when you talk about money, money is separate, and church. But one thing that I've seen through my experience is that you can know where someone's heart lies by the way they use their money. Just show me your budget, and then I can tell you where your heart lies. And one of the major areas which people feel very uncomfortable talking about is a tithe. And we'll talk about the fact that some people say, no, it's not 10%, it's Old Testament and so on. But the issue of tithe, you find people become uncomfortable. And that is because they are not making it a priority in terms of doing what God requires of them. Now, what does stewardship mean? So I think it's important to define the terms as we go through this seminar. So the seminar is stewardship of money. What is stewardship? A steward is a person who manages another's property or financial affairs, or one who administers something on behalf of another person. That's a steward. And that's what we are called to be. To be steward is taking possession of something and caring for that thing as though it is yours. So at this point, let me state the fact that the money is not yours. It is God's. That's the way you should view it. You agree with me? The money is not yours. It's God's. You have just been entrusted. That's why we have said stewardship. So you are caring on behalf, you have taken possession of that wealth, that treasure on behalf of God. And God requires that you use it according to what He requires. Many of us have got servants at home. Like now you're not at home, you have left your servant. What do you expect of them? To be able to take care of whatever you've left in their possession, to take care of your kids, to take care of your baby. And that is a picture of what God has entrusted to us, to be stewards of the money, of the resources, of the wealth. So God has entrusted to us many things, but this afternoon we are looking at the issue of money. So the money belongs to God. And also remember that if you're a steward, you need to give an account, isn't it? You need to give an account. And that's what will happen on the day of the Lord, as we were hearing earlier on. So like it's the same with your servant. When you go home, you want to get a report. Maybe you left them some money to buy some groceries and so on. So you need a report of how they have used that money and what has happened during the time that you were aware. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 7 says, "For who sees anything different in you? What do you have that you did not receive? If then you received it, why do you boast as if you did not receive it?" So everything belongs to God. We have been given the task of taking care of this possession. Another example we can talk about is Adam. When he was put in the Garden of Eden, he was given stewardship of the garden. Now, what is money? Money is something that we all need. For you to come to this conference, you had to pay. It was 600, increased to 900. For you to come from your place, you had to put fuel. You had to get on a bus or a yango. You need money. For food that we are eating, it costs money. So money is part of our lives, and therefore we need to be very clear in terms of how that can be managed. Money can also be referred to in the Bible. It's referred to as wealth. In the broader sense, it's referred to as riches, referred to as mammon in the gospel, or silver and gold. So it's a medium of exchange. It's a way in which we exchange value. So I give you 100 kwacha, you give me a bottle of juice, and so on and so forth. Now I want us to look at the marks of a bad steward. We have said that we are stewards. So I want to start with a negative. What are the marks of one who is not being a good steward of the money that God has entrusted to them? So the first one is that they misuse or abuse their master's possessions. They misuse and abuse what belongs to the master. And one of the ways, one of the examples, I will still go back to the issue of the tithe. You're supposed to give the tithe, but you get the same tithe and go and buy yourself designer clothes, or you go on a holiday or something. That's misusing the master's possessions. You use what belongs to your master for your personal gain. You use what belongs to the master for your personal gain. It might also refer to someone who is wasteful. You are always going with the latest fashion, or you are always going with the latest car on the market, or you want, your house is already okay, but you want to just beautify it on things which are really not necessary. So it's important that even when we are thinking of spending, we are thinking in terms of, is this the best use of the money that I have? Because remember, you are stewards. It is not your money, it's God's money. And I hope that at the end of the day, we'll be able to go back with that in mind, that the money God has given to you is for a given purpose. It's not to be wasted. It's not to be misused. And then we also see that those that are bad stewards of money are normally forgetful of the master. They are normally forgetful of the master. The master is far away in their thinking, and therefore they can do whatever they want. So they make their own plans. The things of God are nowhere in their minds. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 15. The Bible says, but Jeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, stout, and sleek. Then he forsook God who made him and scoffed at the rock of his salvation. So we can all be like Jeshurun. We forget about the master and therefore go on with our own pursuits. That's a mark of one who is a bad steward. The other thing that we see in terms of the mark of a bad steward is greed. And I think that's a major thing. We want to have everything to ourselves, isn't it? We don't want to share. We don't want to give. And greed is the biggest sin that I see with regard to money. And that's why we do not give, because of greed. You're thinking, if I remove this, then I won't have something to use for this and the other thing. So greed is a big issue. And if you want to learn anything about greed, just observe the children as they play. This is my toy. This is mine, mine. And that's how we behave as God's people. We don't want to share. We want to have everything to ourselves. And that's why we have a challenge in the church. We did a survey a few years ago in one of the churches where we got everyone to write down their salary, a monthly salary. So we got all the papers, put them together, and then we added, and then we worked out 10%. 10% is a minimum. So we worked out the amount. The amount was 3 times what we were getting. It was 3 times what we were getting. And I think that is that has been my observation, that in many churches, the giving is about 30%. Only 30% of the people are faithfully giving. Only 30% of the people are being good stewards of the money that God has entrusted to us. No wonder we struggle as churches to pay our pastors well. I saw an article that was written, which was circulating, about the need for us to take good care of the ministers of the gospel, of the men of God. One of the challenges is because the money is in people's pockets. They are not giving. They are not faithful to uh, the requirements that God has put upon us as God's people. We need to be good stewards, and we can achieve much, much more as God's people. I'm told that, I don't know how true it is, but the Muslims, they don't talk about taking 10%. It's more of, what do I need? Okay, food, shelter. Okay, so the rest I give to the Lord. But for many of us, need 10% exact. If something else comes up, me, I already gave. But the principle, I think the New Testament principle is to give as God has blessed you, isn't it? So it can be 20%, can be 30%. You might be you can support your church, but there are other ministries that you can also support outside the church. So that need to be 10%, 90%. This is mine now. Now you start thinking, now how can I squander this money? No. We need to change that mindset. We need to be consistent. One other thing I've seen is that people are not consistent. You find this, maybe after some time, no, I had a funeral, then my uncle was in hospital. No, doesn't work like that. The money for the Lord's work should be set aside. The other mark of a bad steward is having money worries. There are people that worry about money so much, and that betrays a lack of trust in God. I've seen that many who have trusted in God, and that's what the book of Malachi says, put me to the test. And I've seen many people that have done that, and they have never lacked. So there's an element of faith when it comes to issues of money. There are also the issue of marks of a bad steward is one who's lazy, one that is not willing to work. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the issue of gambling. There are many people that want an easy way out, but that's not God's design. We have to work. We have to sweat for us to gather or to accumulate whatever wealth would have. The other mark is the fact that they have no plan. There's no budget. It's basically impulse. You go into town, you find this, let me buy it, or let me get it, and so on and so forth. There's no planning that is involved. That's a mark of a bad steward. A steward needs to be, you need to be deliberate. You need to plan. You need to know what you want to achieve. Let's 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7. Verse 17. Another mark of a bad steward is highlighted in that verse, and it says, as for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, not to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. So there we have an example of bad steward is one who's self-conceited, someone who's self-sufficient, and that's what happens in societies where they become wealthy. A lot of them lose this confidence or trust in God. They don't need to pray about food because there's food in the fridge, isn't it? They don't need to pray about this or the other need. they have got money. So that's the danger that we have for such people. Now let's go to the marks of a good steward. So I started with a negative in terms of the marks of a bad steward. Now I want us to look at the marks of a good steward. So we looked at the marks of a bad steward. Now we look at the good, which I hope many of us will be able to follow. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 2 says, moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful. It is required of stewards that they be found faithful. That is what God requires of us, to be faithful. To be faithful to what He has commanded us regarding the issue of money. To be obedient to the demands upon us. And that is to use money to the glory of God and to use money to the extension of His kingdom here on earth. So God requires faithfulness in those that are to be His good stewards. God also requires diligence. Many Christians are lazy. Just go to their workplace and ask about this brother or this sister. You find that they do not apply themselves. But a good steward is diligent in the management of the wealth, the possessions of the master. They are eager and dedicated to the things in their possession. And that also comes in the life of the church. There are very few people that you can entrust with a task and expect it to be done well. They'll be giving excuses. That's also the reason why we do not have many Christians who are doing well financially or business-wise. If we just follow the principles of the Bible, we'll have many people amongst us who are doing well. And that's why you find that the Jewish nation has done well, because there's a sense in which I feel they have carried on some of the teachings that they received, which were passed on from generation to generation. They are very, very successful. And even Christian people should be able to be successful. I do not see why we shouldn't. The principles are there in the Bible. We should be able to easily raise amongst us enough money to sponsor the conference, for example. We should not be struggling if we are only diligent, if we are dedicated to manage the things that God has entrusted to us. God has promised to bless us, isn't it? It's not only for the Pentecostals. I'm not preaching a prosperity gospel. Some of you might go and say, no, he was preaching about prosperity. No, it's what is in the Bible. The Pentecostals, obviously, they have exaggerated and so on. But the scriptures are true. If you prove yourself to be faithful, to be diligent, God will bless you. And that is what being a good steward requires of us. A good steward is one who is fruitful. Remember the parable of the 10 talents. You are not at the same place where you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. No, you improve yourself financially. You find ways of multiplying and increasing the value of your estate or your possessions. You invest. You do not waste money or lose money. So you need to be shrewd in terms of seeing the opportunities that are there. Use your powers of judgment to be able to invest your money. I remember a few weeks ago, we were discussing at church with one of the brothers. So he says, there's a border in Kipushi, you know Kipushi. Kipushi border, on the other side, there's a mine, Congolese mine, and there's demand for different products. So it's such things that you can look at, such opportunities where you can buy and go and sell in an area where it's required, and you make a return or a profit on that transaction. There are not many Christians that are involved in business, and I think that is something that we need to be looking at. We should not just be content with where we are. There is a bigger task ahead of us, which requires money. Like I said, everyone needs money, isn't it? I was at the office the other day, so someone was wondering, was asking a question around the lines that people love money. I said, okay, not love, but people need money. We all need money. That's why I wake up at 06 to go to the office. Is it because of charity? No, because I need the money. So we all need money. And even the task that God has given to us requires money. It requires money. And therefore we should be thinking of how we can be good stewards by multiplying or finding ways in which we can increase the resources that we have as God's people, so that we can carry on that mandate that God has given to us. I know that in many places, you ask a ministry leader, why haven't you done this? Or there was no money. So you're wondering, this money issue. We never get anywhere. But God has given us the means for us to be able to have the resources that are required. It's not like God has given us a task without what is required. It's all within our grasp. So we need to be shrewd. We need to be able to assess situations and be able to take advantage of the situations around us. That's what it means to be a good steward. And that's what we want to be. You want on the last day to be told, good and faithful servant. Good and faithful servant. That's what we should be aiming for. A good steward is also one who's willing to sacrifice for the master's estate and mission. Someone who's willing to forego any comforts and luxuries. One of the problems that we have is that we want to enjoy now, but there's also investing. You sacrifice now, knowing that you'll be able to get the reward later. And I think that's more or less, I don't know if I can call it an African problem. We are not into long-term planning. Our friends are planning for 30 years. China, what will happen in 30 years? Us, maybe we're just looking at next year or up to the next election. 2026. This needs to happen, but we need to have a long-term view of things. We need to have a servant's heart, knowing that we are working for a master. We need to have a servant's heart, knowing that we have a servant that we are working for, and one that will require an account of us. Now, what are the results? So we've looked at a bad steward, a good steward. Now I want us to look at the results of being a bad steward. What will happen to you if you are a bad steward? I think the Bible is very clear. Even the little that you have will be taken away from you. Even the little. I've known people that are stingy, people that are not willing to share. You find that they are in the same place. A lazy person will never be entrusted by God with more things. It will be taken away from you. So you might be saying, no, I had funerals, I had patient, you don't give to, it will even be worse. You find that you won't even be able to have that little money that you have. That's what the scripture says, and that's what happens. As a church treasurer, I've seen, when I was a church treasurer, I've seen that the people that are faithful in giving in the church are the ones that the Lord blesses. Some of you ask, how do you know? There are checks. People, those days there were checks. There are transfers. You can see the names. It's not like you close your eyes at no, I won't see the name. So you know the people that are faithful, and you can see that the Lord is faithful in blessing them. Those that rarely give, you find they are struggling. They don't give a tithe, but they're also the ones that come to look for help. The Bible is true. It's very, very true. And we can see it in our own experiences. It says that you will not be blessed with true spiritual riches. Your ministry will not be blessed of God. Money, they have said, is a bad master. It will draw you away from God. It will draw you away from God. The pursuit of money becomes your chief priority. No, now I need to promise ka something. Pasande, you're gone. Or on a Saturday when there's supposed to be a ministry meeting, that becomes your chief pursuit. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 9 to 10, the Bible says, people who want to be rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. That's what the Apostle Paul says. People that are eager for money have wandered from the faith, and they have pierced themselves with many sorrows. The other aspect is the fact that a bad steward is a hypocrite. The Bible calls them a hypocrite. A hypocrite is one who pretends, is one whose actions do not match their words. You are there singing, we give our all, but in Darama, you're not giving. That's being a hypocrite. God requires us to be faithful. And when you're not being a good steward, you are a hypocrite. We need to give our all to God. Everything about us needs to be given to God. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24 says, no one can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. So that's what happens when you pursue, the pursuit of money becomes your chief occupation. You begin to serve money rather than God. Now let's look at a good steward. What are the results of one who's a good steward? The opposite is true to the bad steward. More will be given to you so that you can extend and increase your service to God. God will use you as a channel to bless. He'll give you more as the resources come this side and you pass them on, more will be given to your charge. That's what we see in the parables. I think the parables are very clear in that regard. We also have enough to live on and even to share with those in need, which is related to my first point. God will ensure that we are well catered for and also have enough to share with others. You also have eternal rewards in heaven. The scriptures tell us that you'll be welcomed into heaven as a good and faithful servant. You'll be putting up treasures in heaven, and therefore there will be a reward for those that are good stewards. An example of one who was a good steward in the Bible is Joseph. I think a well-known story for those that have gone through Sunday school or have been in the church for some time. He was entrusted with the possessions of Potiphar, and the Lord prospered and blessed him. And it's the same God that we serve. If we are faithful, God will be able to bless us. Genesis chapter 39, verse 1 to 6. I'll just read the latter part. His master saw that the Lord was with him, that is Potiphar, and that the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. He made him overseer in his house and over all that he had. And you know what happened to Joseph? He was not only charge over Potiphar, he was second in charge in the whole of Egypt. Because he was faithful. Because he was faithful. He was a faithful steward. Now let's look at the practical applications. That will be my last point. What are the practical applications of what we have learned concerning stewardship? It has been said, live within your means. But I say, live below your means. Live below your means. I'm using the words of the Lord Jesus Christ. When he said that it has been said, but now I say. So I say, live below your means. Be able to sacrifice some of the luxuries and requirements for the sake of the gospel. There are many people that live above their means. There are many people that live above their means. And the reason they do that is to show off to their friends, to show off to their neighbors, to show off to their churchmates that they are doing well. And they even post on Facebook about a happy life. But you find that they are living beyond their means. Yes, you should live you should live within your means, but more importantly, you can live below your means so that whatever extra is directed to the work of the Lord. The second practical application is that do not spend as if there is no tomorrow. Do not spend as if there is no tomorrow. There are many Christians that are destitute because they did not plan their finances well. So there's need to invest. There's need to save, even the little. There's always room to save and be able to invest in either can be property or treasury bills or whatever investment you can find. The third point is that be faithful in giving to the church. Be faithful in giving to the church. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 says, bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. Put the Lord to the test, and you find that He's faithful to His word. The fourth point is that there needs to be contentment. You need to be content with what God has given you and to work within what God has given you. Most times we are quite content until we hear of someone who has more. Then we begin to feel as if, nah, how come me have the same qualification and so on and so forth? How come I'm not getting that kind of money? Maybe that's why we do not share our salaries, so that people can remain content. Because when people start sharing, others become discontent. But we need to be content, whatever the situation, with what God has given to us. Remember the talents. Someone was given 5, someone was given 10, and I think 1. So you need to work within what God has given you, because that's what you will be judged based on. You won't be judged based on a rich man's income. You'll be judged on what God has given to you. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 5 to 8 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Number 5, you need to set your priorities right. You need to set your priorities right. What do you treasure most in your life? What you treasure most will be revealed by how you spend your money. If you're someone who's into entertainment, your budget, a lot of it will go towards entertainment. If you're someone who cares about looks, most of the budget will be on designer clothes. So how you spend your money reveals something of your priorities in life. It reveals something of your priorities in life. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to 21 says, do not lay up treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So money is a big test of where your affections, where your priorities lie. I remember someone has said that when someone gets converted, the last part to be converted is his pocket. That's the last part for many people. For some people, it doesn't even get converted. It remains unconverted. Just for them to get money from their pockets and put it on the table, it's a big challenge. Even the 10% is a big struggle. Let alone if you say 20%, you have lost them. So how we manage our finances is a big indication of our spirituality. One who is a mature Christian, you see them from their consistency in giving, not only the tithe, but also in supporting other ministries of the church. They're always willing and ready to spend and be spent for the gospel. So it reveals something of the condition of our heart. Let me end with the words of John Wesley, who said, to gain money, we must not lose our souls. Gain all you can without hating yourself, your family, or your neighbor. Then save all you can, then give all you can. We have seen many, that's end of quote. We have seen many people that have lost their health because of the pursuit of money. They are doing 2 or 3 jobs just because of money. Some who have left their families, hate their families in pursuit of money. They have gone away to other places. But that should not be. And I think that the words of John Wesley are very appropriate for us. We must not lose our souls as we pursue our money. We must not hate ourselves, our family, or our neighbor. So it's not to say that from here you go and start looking for money. No. The idea is that we work within what God has instructed, that we should be good stewards of the money that God has given to us, and we should use all legitimate means in order to gain the money either through work or business or otherwise, and be able to use that money for the glory of God and for the extension of His kingdom here on earth. We should all be aiming for that wonderful welcome from the Master. Well done, good and faithful servant. Thank you.